So they fought to rebuild and to do so stronger than before, to replace the fallen clay bricks with the gadget stone. They carried their stone, carved them into massive blocks, and bring them back to the ground of destruction, to where the bricks have fallen. The first stone of building is always the most important, the cornerstone. The laying down of the cornerstone begins the construction. It's not just a necessary act, but a symbolic one. And in the case of Israel's rebuilding, the laying down of the first gate stone would be filled with symbolic meaning, uh, signaling the beginning of the nation's rebuilding and the fulfillment of its vow. May I have the seal? So I handed it to him, and he lifted it up, and as he revealed its meaning, the fifth harbinger, the nation responds to the calamity with the defiance in the form of stone. The stone is cut out of their mountains and bedrock. They chisel it into a block. They bring it back to the ground of destruction. The stone becomes the symbol, the embodiment of their vow, their confidence, and their defiance into the stone. They rest their plans of rebuilding and their vow of national uh, resurgence. But the gadget stone is in reality a symbol of a nation's rejection of God's calling. When the sign of the gadget stone manifests, it's a harbinger carrying a warning of future calamity. The fifth harbinger, the gadget stone, and what does it have to do with America? They came here, Nuriel. They came here to find the gadget stone. Here? I asked. Here. To the mountains. They came here and cut it out of the mountain rock and brought it back. Back? Back to where the bricks had fallen. To ground zero? Yes. For the body declares the bricks have fallen, but we will rebuild with carried stone. So the rebuilding must begin on the same site of destruction. So Gadsden must be brought to where the bricks had fallen. To the ground of the calamity, thus the credit stone had to be brought back to ground zero. And so it was. And what happened at ground zero once they brought it back? There was a gathering there, a gathering of leaders, the mayor of New York City, the governor of New York State, the governor of New Jersey, various officials involved with the rebuilding, other leaders, and a gathering of guests and spectators. They were all focused on a single object, the Gadsden. The Gadsden most often took the form of a massive rectangular block of cut rock. So took the stone that was laid on the pavement of ground zero. A massive rectangular block of carved stone laid at ground zero. A 20-ton massive rectangular block of carved stone. The stone was to mark the beginning of the rebuilding. But we will rebuild with the carved stone. Exactly. The stone of Isaiah's prophecy was another symbol of national defiance. So too they made the Gazi stone of ground zero into a symbol. They even gave it a name. They called it to the Freedom Stone. It was created to be the symbolic cornerstone of rebuilding, not just of ground zero, but of New York City and America. Its laying down was to be the first act in that rebuilding and the beginning of the tower that was to rise from the side. So, as in the last days of ancient Israel, the Gazi stone would again become the symbol of a nation's rebuilding and restoration. Were there any such proclamation or vows spoken? I asked. When the Gazi stone was laid at ground zero. Why do you ask that? Because the stone is Isaiah 9:10 was linked to the proclaiming of the vow. there was such a proclamation, and as in the ancient case, their proclamation joined the nation's rebuilding to decorate the stone. Their words were in fact a modern paraphrase of the ancient vow. On ground zero, the American leaders declared that they too would rebuild with the carried stone. The stone they declared would be the beginning of the nation's rebuilding. It would forever remain a symbolic cornerstone for the rebuilding of New York and the nation. As it was in the ancient Israel, the act of rebuilding with the carried stone was intended to send a message, so Governor of New York would proclaim. By laying this magnificent cornerstone of hope, we are sending a message to the people around the world, a message of defiance. Yes, a message of defiance. On one hand, defiance of the calamity, but the other, beneath the surface, something much deeper, a much deeper defiance. Just as it was with ancient Israel, one commentary explains it this way. Far from being humbled and becoming repentant as a result of the chastening judgments of the law, they are resolutely determined to withstand God and rebuild on an even grander scale. The bricks have crumbled, but we will rebuild with the stone cut out of the quarry. Stone cut out of the quarry, just as the rebuilding of Ground Zero of America involved the stone cut out of the quarry here. Yes, and even the New York government would allude to the stone cut out the quarry as he spoke his proclamation over the stone. Today we take 20 tons of Adirondack granite, the bedrock of our state, and place it as the foundation. The bedrock of a new symbol of American strength and confidence. As it was with ancient Israel, the carried stone would become the embodiment of a nation's misplaced confidence in its own power to emerge stronger than before. And the act of laying down the carried stone would be a manifestation of what the commentaries call the spirit of defiance. The bricks may have fallen down, it was of no consequence. They would build with whole stone. Thus they breathed the very spirit of defiance. The nation determines to act in the spirit of defiance. It will change its fallen bricks into massive stones. The spirit of defiance. Why is this significant? On the day that America officially began its rebuilding by replacing the fallen bricks of 911 with a Gladstone, the governor of New York would make the proclamation from the floor, ground zero. Listen to words. Today we, the heirs of that revolutionary spirit of defiance, lay this cornerstone. He uses those exact words, the same words, and the same act. The carried stone and the spirit of defiance joined together. Unbelievable, the whole thing is so. It is, but it happened. The ancient drama reenacted on ground zero. And what happened after? I asked. After the stone was laid, what happened after was especially striking. The rebuilding of ground zero had already become tangled in a continuous stream of controversy, confusion, obstacles. dissension and conflict even after the stone was set in place. The tower's construction would be challenged, halted, withdrawn, renamed, and reversed. The plans to rebuild Ground Zero would be frustrated for years. Eventually, they would remove the stone from Ground Zero altogether. Strangely, I said. They removed the cornerstone, and after all those wars, strange and not so strangely, the plans of ancient Israel to defin- defiantly rebuild itself would likewise be frustrated. It would ultimately lead the nation to the point of destruction. The laying down of the gate stone was one more link in a chain of judgment. The commentary goes on to reveal what it all leads to. He will turn its fallen bricks into massive stones that will not fail. It was to be followed with a fearful penalty, to be pressed on every hand by its enemies, to be prepared for still impending miseries. The defiance of God shuts out immeasurable good. It's a replaying. It's all replaying itself. The whole thing is so uncanny, and they had no idea what they were doing, that they were in reenacting the ancient prophecy. No, and yet they each ended up stepping into the ancient footsteps. It was a prophetic act taking place according to the mystery. So what does it all portend for America's future? If those who came to Ground Zero that day to issue their proclamation had realized what it all portended, they would have stayed home. He reached into his coat pocket and gave him the next seal, the seal of the sixth harbinger, I said. And this is, the image is clear enough, he said, as is the prophecy. This one shouldn't be hard to uncover. Still, some help would be appreciated. The sixth harbinger appeared the same day as the first, and in the same place of the one that came after it. Well, that really clears everything up, I replied. And to think I was worried you wouldn't be specific enough this time, Nuriel. Yes? Have a great rest of your vacation. And with that, he left me there, standing at the edge of the mountain. I'm sure I will, I answered in the raised voice. Try to get some rest, he responded as he walked. Rest is good. And of course, I'll be sure to bring you back a souvenir, I shouted. Just the seal, Nuriel, just bring back the seal. And with that, he disappeared into the woods.